Hey, what's up everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I wanted to make a quick video about like first teams from all the different regions. Mine's going to be a little different. It's not necessarily who I think was the best this split or who I think is the best talent long term. It's kind of like a blend of those, and I reserve the right to choose whoever I want because it's my video and I can do whatever I want. So thanks to Alex Wallace for commenting on the LPL's first, second, and third teams, so that I got this idea. So I'm gonna do it for LPL, LCK, LEC, and the LCS. So I'm just gonna kind of go through what the LPL has done first, and then I'll give my answers. So first up, we have the first team with the Shy in the top lane. Actually, we should do it this way. The Shy in the top lane, Kanavi, Knight, Jackie Love, and Lumao. On the second team, they gave it to Zoom, Ning, Rookie, Loken, and Baolon. And then on the third team, we have 369, Weiwei, Mole, Jiaomeng, and PP God. So I think it's important to kind of consider the expectations of these teams going into the split. So relative to expectations, I think that the Shy is obviously the best top laner from this split performance-wise. He had a lot of big carry performances, even though in the beginning of the season he was still kind of frustrating to watch for a lot of people. I haven't given up faith in Invictus Gaming at all this entire split, and I deserve to be rewarded for that. So my reward is putting the Shy in the top lane. So I guess the other thing to consider would be, like, what kinds of top laners do we have? So I think the Shy and Zoom are, like, they fit two different archetypes, and they're both, like, the quintessential version of that archetype. So the Shy is a carry top laner. He wants to play champions like Quinn, or mostly Quinn. He wants to play Quinn. He wants to play Gnar. And these champions can take over a game in different ways, but like unique ways. So, like, when the Shy picks one of those kinds of champions, he's trying to not only win his lane, but dominate his lane and make the other player completely incompetent. Zoom, on the other hand, is more about a team fighter. He wants to get a lead for Kanavi and then show up to the team fights later on and be helpful. So there's nothing wrong with that playstyle, but it's a lot easier than what the Shy is doing, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration for this. So in the jungle, we have Kanavi and Ning and Weiwei. Who are they missing? So not that. Let's go to the summer. I think SFM deserved to be one of the top three junglers. I think he had a better split than Weiwei did. I think Beishang was up there. Xiaolong Bao had a really good split. But if I had to give it to one jungler, it probably wouldn't be Karsa, just because this was somewhat expected from Karsa. He's always a really good jungler. The fact that he's not on one of the first three teams is kind of insane, because Karsa does a lot to get Knight into a spot where he can carry. If anything, Karsa's probably underappreciated right now for what he's doing for top esports, because Jackie Love gets so much credit and Knight gets so much credit. I mean, relative to expectations, I think Ning would have to be the player that is on the first team. But I don't mind Kanavi being here either. Kanavi's really the main reason that JDG is good. So I'm fine with Kanavi being the first team. In the mid lane, we have Knight, Rookie, Mole, some other players that I would consider. I don't think Yagao is up there. I don't like Angel that much. I think Mole's overrated at this point, which is insane. But he's a good player, but he's like, I don't think he's third team. Maybe for the performances split you can kind of give it to him, but I don't think that it's really reproducible. I think Doinby always deserves a shout out. Xiaohu played well this split. Scout played okay this split. Zika played really well this split. So if it was like relative to expectations only, I would say probably if Zika had the entire split to play for Vici Gaming, I think that they would. I think they would have made playoffs. But top esports, I think Knight is the right choice. Knight is the most important player for top esports and is the maybe not highest volatility, because somebody was saying that the other day, like he's a known quantity, he's like consistent. It's like he consistently destroys people, but destroying people, you can't depend on that. So that's not something that you can really consider consistent. That'd be like saying after somebody hits a home run 3 games in a row, it's like, oh, they consistently hit home runs every single game. It's like, well, that's not sustainable, and you can kind of play around it by pitching around it. So that's kind of what I'm afraid of with Knight, is that teams are going to come up with some kinds of strategies to play around Knight. If you reduce the volatility in the game, then it should hurt top esports as a whole. In the bot lane, they put Jackie Love. Jackie Love was definitely not the best bot laner this split, so we definitely need to find a replacement for Jackie Love. So Jackie Love, Loken, Puff, Huanfeng, Sam D, Kramer, Jiaomeng, LWX. I think that Jiaomeng probably had the best split relative to expectations. I think that Huanfeng didn't have flashy statistics for most of the split, but Sunning would not be able to play their playstyle without Huanfeng existing on that team, because teams are afraid of Huanfeng and they know that they need to be somewhat aggressive in the early game. So just Huanfeng being on that team has allowed Bin and SFM and Angel to play much more freely. So I guess it's more of like an indirect thing, but I think Huanfeng deserved to be top 3. I would probably give it to Jiaomeng, because Jiaomeng, he has to. It's not that he's overcompensating for Teacher Ma, but the team is built around Jiaomeng. So I feel like Jiaomeng and Huanfeng are both better options than Jackie Love. Not saying that Huanfeng is better than Jackie Love. It's just that their role within the team is fundamentally different. So I'd probably go with Jiaomeng. And then in the support role, it's obvious that it's PP God. PP God is the obvious answer. It's the only answer. So that's it for the LPL. In the LCK, I think that there's only really 2 options. It's Naguri from Damwon Gaming and Kana from T1. Kana is setting like solo kill records, which isn't really like indicative of team success at all. It's just like Kana can identify when he's stronger than the enemy laner and then kill them, and that's not really supposed to happen that often in top level League of Legends, but he's consistently doing it. It's pretty insane, and yeah, that's just awesome. So I want to give it to Kana because I like T1, and Damwon Gaming is going to get some love right now. So I think the best jungler relative to expectations and performance-wise is Canyon. I did not like Canyon for a lot of the split because I didn't really think that he was the reason why his team was playing so well. But I think the Canyon Showmaker combination right now is the best jungle mid in Korea. There are a lot of good jungle mids in Korea, but right now they're the best, and for this split they were the best relative to expectations and also performance-wise. Like, I think if you just measured it by performance in the split, regardless of what the expectations were going into the split, they would still be the top pair. So Canyon and Showmaker. In the mid lane, Chovy and BDD are always in consideration. They're both very good players. But if you look at the mid lane talent pool in Korea right now, it's kind of weak. Like, you have Showmaker, Chovy, BDD, Faker, and Closer, and then like nobody else. Like, I don't like any of the other mid laners really. Fate has looked okay. but that's more relative to expectations than like actual long-term skill, I think. In the bot lane, again, I think there's only two options. I think Ruler and Teddy are the clear options. Like, Teddy has had some games where he's completely carried T1. Ruler is the person that they're really trying to get in a spot to carry the game, so he reminds me more of like a Huanfeng or Zhaomeng. So I think I'm going to go with Ruler on that one. And then for support, I think Keria is the best support in Korea right now, and I'm going to pick Keria. Because if I was starting a team around a support, Keria is the only one that I would even consider. So there's that. All right, next up, let's go to the LEC. So the LEC, I think that there are two top laners who have been the best this split, and that is Bwipo and Genax, but for pretty different reasons. So for Bwipo, Fnatic underperformed a lot throughout the entire split, and a lot of it had to do with him, like in their losses specifically, but Bwipo is still probably the first or second most talented top laner in the league. He is the most intelligent top laner, I think. I think that kind of goes without saying. And then he also has unique picks that show he understands the game and his role within his team better than other players. So his Cho'Gath play directly led them to at least 3 wins, I think, which is pretty funny that a champion that's somewhat considered outside of the meta can be that impactful around objectives. So it shows that they have a very good read on that portion of the meta. They did a lot of bad things this split, Fnatic, but they got the top lane right for most of it. The other top laner that I want to give credit to is Genax. So Genax used to be a mid laner, now he's a top laner, and he is a fundamental reason why SK Gaming was able to draft well and win games throughout the split. I think Genax, this is more of like a relative to expectations kind of thing, because I don't think anybody really had high expectations for him, but just a really good performance overall. Without Genax, they don't make it in the playoffs. I think Trick kind of was pretty good and he filled his role. Zazie was pretty good and filled his role. Crownshot did carry some games, but 80 carries always get too much credit. Same thing with mid laners, especially in the LEC. And then Limit, it's tough to really separate supports unless you're doing stuff like Keria. In the jungle, I think there are 3 junglers that people want to kind of give credit for their team success. Inspired, Shadow, and Gilius. So Gilius obviously did not have the entire split to play for Schalke. If he did, maybe he'd have a realistic chance at the first team. But I think Inspired and Shadow both played better than Gilius for an extended period of time. So while it's nice to talk about Gilius and say like, oh, he should be considered for MVP, he really shouldn't. So between Inspired and Shadow, I think that you have to give it to Inspired because he is another relative to expectations pick. I think Shadow is probably the better player and will be the better player for a longer period of time, but Inspired had a really great split. In the mid lane, we have Caps, Larson, and Humanoid. So Larson and Humanoid, they obviously have looked good because they're on 2 teams that have been consistently winning. G2, on the other hand, has been pretty shaky throughout the split, but without Caps, they would not have been in this position at all. Caps has been the carry of the team for the entire split, has played much better than Perks has, and if you're the primary carry on the number 3 team overall, when the other, like, there have been games where Perks has been horrible, like an actual bad player. So I think you have to give it to Caps. In the bot lane, I'm just considering 2 different duos. So I think Hansama and Vander, or Karzi and Kaiser. And I think that Mad Lions have shown that they're more versatile, but I think that Hansama and Vander have played better overall. Hansama is more of a traditional more of a traditional AD carry in the sense that he needs all of these resources, and then he's going to be put into a late game situation where he can carry. But you can put different AD carries into that spot, and they might not necessarily make it work. Hans Sama has the aggression and the playmaking ability to actually succeed in that scenario, which is really all you can ask for an AD carry. In the support role, I think Vander is probably not getting enough credit for his actual mechanical play, but also the macro play. Vander's been around for a long time, so the easy thing to do is say, oh, well, he's very good at macro, he's a shot caller, etc., etc. But you can't only be someone who shot calls and be successful. So I think he's probably underappreciated right now. And then Kaiser, Kaiser's been very good all split, has a lot of different kinds of champions that he can play. He's played Wukong, he's played a bunch of different champions with Ascena as the AD carry. So I do like the flexibility and the versatility of the bot lane from Mad Lions. But it also kind of shows that they depend on their other teammates to carry as well. They might not play that playstyle in the playoffs, but if they do, I think it'll be much more obvious how Mad Lions views their own team, or at least the meta. So if Caitlyn continues to be very popular, I think that Mad Lions is one team that will be able to deal with it better because they play Senna at such a high level. So let's go to the LCS. And the LCS, I'm pretty certain on who I like, but I'll kind of go through the thought process anyways. So in the top lane, I think Someday, Licorice, and Impact are the three players that most people are going to talk about. They might include Solo in there, but I'm not a big fan of Solo in terms of being the best top laner in the world, or in the in the LCS in the world. That's funny. So let's go through the arguments for all three. Impact was the top laner on the best team. I think that is the entire argument for somebody like Impact. So I'm not picking Impact. Licorice is the top laner for the second best team in the league, and I think that he is getting a ton of benefits from playing on the best team and having the leads that Blabber and Niski create. Well, mostly Blabber. So Blabber's creating all of these leads, and then everybody benefits from that. So it's tough to give too much credit to Licorice, especially when he wasn't playing very well in the beginning of the split. And for that reason, I think Someday is the obvious choice for top laner of the split. I think that without Someday, 100 Thieves would be garbage. And Someday actually has the best KDA out of any top laner in the LCS, which is insane considering their record. So they are 7-11. They have a losing record, and I'm pretty sure that his KDA is like a full point ahead of everybody else. So Someday is the first team top laner. Broken Blade could also be considered, but he played really bad in the first 2/3 of the split and then kind of turned it on. In the jungle, there are only two options. It's Blabber and Broxa. So when Broxa made the transition from Europe to North America, everyone thought that he'd be able to fix the problems that Team Liquid had, but he didn't have enough time to kind of mesh with the team and all that kind of garbage. So nobody really had high expectations for him in the summer. They thought maybe it was a mistake, but he's played really well this split. Blabber has not had as good of a summer as he had a spring, but he has shown a lot of versatility in his champion pool. So if we look right here, he played 9 champions. Broxa has a much smaller pool. He's only playing 4 champions. And I think that from a team perspective, I prefer this kind of idea where you have an idea of how the game should be played, you have the meta champions, and you're just going to run out one of those meta champions every single game depending on the draft. And that's what C9 did in the spring. And that's what I expect C9 to do in the playoffs. This is probably just C9 saying, listen, we're definitely going into the playoffs. Like, there's no way that we miss playoffs after starting, like, 8-0 or something like that. So let's get some other champions under our belts, show these teams other things that they have to prepare for, which I think is kind of a mistake because teams really don't need to prepare for all those things if they have an idea of what they're doing themselves. And I think TL does have that. So if I'm looking at the champion pools, they're very similar. I guess Set isn't going to be a very contested pick. I think I have to give it to Blabber because Team Liquid's wins seem more like team wins, and C9 wins are more like stomps that are created by Blabber. So I'm going to go with Blabber. Let's go to the mid lane. So for the mid lane, I think there are three mid laners that have played better than everybody else's split: Power of Evil, Jensen, and Bjergsen. Bjergsen always gets a ton of credit for TSM doing well, but it's well deserved. He has a very big champion pool, so he's played 10 champions. Power of Evil's played 7 champions. Jensen's played 8 champions. Jensen, I think I'm not sure if he's really creating a lot of these leads because Team Liquid has done such a good job through the macro game that they really just do look more like team victories, and it's unclear how they're going to match up in a 5-game series against C9, because if C9 can carve out an early lead in a few of those games, I think TL is going to have a tough time coming back into the games, whereas C9, if they're losing, I feel like they could mechanically outperform Team Liquid. Bjergsen, TSM didn't look great for a lot of the split, and I think that was a lot of Bjergsen's fault because he wasn't able to shot call effectively with Biofrost in the bot lane. But the aggression of Treats has kind of opened up TSM's ability to play more aggressive. So I don't think we can really give Bjergsen all the credit for the turnaround, but we can give him a lot of it. So for that reason, I think Power of Evil is the best mid laner in the LCS right now. Making FlyQuest the third ranked team in the standings is pretty impressive. They're a very talented team. I think Solo's not that great, probably overrated because he's an NA top laner and people want an NA top laner to be good, but is he actually good? Not really. Santorin's a good player, Power of Evil's a good player, Ignar's a good player. Wild Turtle's not. Mash is not. Solo's not. So you have to give even more credit to the other members on the team. Santorin probably should have been considered for the jungle part, my bad. But I knew I was going to give mid lane to Power of Evil, so at least FlyQuest is getting some credit for that. And Santorin has a lot to do with Power of Evil's success, so he gets an honorable mention. In the bot lane, the best AD carry this split has been Sven. He's been really the only AD carry to show off multiple playstyles, and he's done it relatively well. He's played Sona, Senna, Cassiopeia, and Wukong, and then he's also played traditional AD carries. So that shows a lot of flexibility. That's going to be very fun to watch during the playoffs. Hopefully they don't troll themselves and start throwing away games with stuff like Sona Lux, but the Senna's good, and I think Senna's going to be important in playoffs. For support, there are 3 supports that have been clearly the best. Vulcan with Sven is pretty important, and I think for that reason you have to kind of give Vulcan credit for Sven being able to be the first team AD carry. Treats really helped turn TSM around. Everybody's giving him a lot of credit for the aggression that you're seeing in their games right now. Even Tactical has said that he's probably the biggest reason that he has transitioned so easily into the LCS, is learning aggressive play from Treats. And then Core JJ, when it comes to macro and Team Liquid's success, I think you kind of have to just assume that Core JJ is telling them what to do in every scenario. He's made Tactical look good. I don't think Tactical is that good. They keep trying to make Tactical a thing, like Fetch, but it's not going to happen. Stop trying to make Tactical a thing. So I'm going to give it to Core JJ. So just going through it once again, I think the Shy is correct, Kanavi is correct, Knight is correct. I think Zhao Meng was the best relative to expectations. I think Jackie Love just got this because his name is Jackie Love, and he's a big popular star in China. And then Lu Mao, good player, but PP God is PP God, so you got to give it to PP God. In Korea, I think the first team should be Kana, Canyon, Showmaker, Ruler, and Keria. That was probably the easiest one to do. And then in the LEC, I think it's Whippo, Inspired or Shadow. You can kind of give it to either. I think Caps was obviously the best mid laner and the most important mid laner in the LEC. In the bot lane, I prefer Hansama and Vander to Karzi and Kaiser, but they both deserve some attention. And then in the LCS, I think it's Someday, Broxa, Power of Evil, Sven, and Core JJ. So, that's kind of where I stand at the end of the regular season. Things can change in the postseason, but not very much in terms of like who I think deserves credit for their team's success. So, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.